Welcome to another episode of Brothers Cast. I am Wasabi, and joining me today is the beautiful and not often here, Mr. Kyle. How you doing?
Pretty good, man. Thank you. I'm not that beautiful, but most people would disagree.
I mean, any man with facial hair, I think, is at the very least, you go from like a 5 to a 6. You know what I'm saying? So
just shaved yesterday, so thanks.
What the? I'm just trying to grow facial hair just so I can go from maybe a 7 to an 8. At least my girlfriend, hopefully at least double digits. But
I've been going to church, so I figured I should probably lose the fucking douchebag goatee. It doesn't work.
God bless you, Kale. Today we're gonna talk about just some general news. Our buddy Schmeat, he's just running a little bit late, so hopefully he can get on before we get off. It's a little bit late right now, and we'll see where this goes. All right.
So if he is able to get on, we should definitely cover the new oath in the Navy, because that got under my skin reading that.
Yes, I only glimpsed it, but I was kind of surprised about that.
I'll let him control that conversation, because obviously he'll know more about it than I will. But my basic take on that was that they're making people pledge to something that they cannot logically hold. And that's pretty messed up, to say the least.
Well, this is what we get. Oh my goodness. All right, let's start. So what's happening in New York right now is Governor Cuomo. Is he under investigations or what is it specifically? I've only been briefly following it.
I don't know if there's actual investigations already being launched. I think that's more of a little bit down the road. I think it's just the political hot water that's going to lead to investigations, but I'm not really sure on that one.
And for those of you who don't know or haven't been living under a rock, Governor Cuomo's, I believe they would be his governor's executive version of an executive order, for the most part, basically putting a whole bunch of, relatively speaking, I don't want to say relatively speaking, but healthy people that don't have COVID, generally older population individuals, into nursing homes, and basically just quarantining them there, ultimately killing a large population of New York's elderly. I think
correction, he is under investigation by the U.S. Attorney and FBI.
Under the investigation of the U.S. Attorney and FBI. Jesus. And I just wanted to talk about this because I've been really fascinated because, and I think it's mainly because of just, politics and people basically just being very cutthroat regardless of your party, especially with the Democratic Party. But, regardless of what people think of Cuomo, at least the Democratic, institutions, I think, have a much more positive opinion of him, at least to an extent, or at the very least exteriorly within the media show it for the most part. The guy was going to win, an Emmy, I think? Or did he win an Emmy?
He did. It's just ridiculous.
I know. It's insane, too. And
self-fellatio fest.
And I'm not saying that he was going to be protected by any stretch of the imagination, but if you're a logical person, and even in these crazy times, it's you would probably assume that Cuomo was probably not going to be under as much hot water under, say, a Biden administration.
Yeah, I definitely thought that too, and I was thinking about that. I think it's really interesting that it's almost like he was protected by the media because they didn't want to say anything that might potentially make it look like Trump wasn't the big bad meanie. Now that Trump is out of the picture, they still need to sell stories. And now Cuomo's on the hot seat, and he doesn't have the big orange man to deflect everything against. So it almost seems like I was completely wrong, and that Biden winning is actually bad news for Cuomo.
I think it's I've been listening to a lot of Robert Barnes lately, and to just a whole bunch of other people, and he pointed something out that I always thought was really interesting. Was I don't even think it's because of of Biden himself. I actually think it's probably more Kamala Harris more than anything else. I think with the position that she holds, especially now, He's because like I've been really kind of trying to understand. I've been going on these deep dives on history, and once you understand like the real political game and the political machine, especially with our country's history, I mean, if I'm gonna be honest, Democrats more often than not and Republicans take out their own members more often than not. And it's kind of insane how far it's gone. I just did an I did an episode on James A. Garfield, our 20th president, and I only briefly talked about it in that little understanding, but like there's like 15 different factors that went into getting him to become the president. Like he made like 10 different deals in various different states, and the big one I talked about was New York with Roscoe Conkling. If you remember him, he's probably one of the more famous like youthful Republican politicians to come out of New York, who was so powerful he basically held sway of who was going to win or lose in New York. And there was like a whole bunch of different deals and stuff. And then once Garfield became president, he's basically like, "Oh, I'm going to get you out of here, Conkling." And then he ends up getting shot, or the second president assassinated, second president assassinated. And then his guy, Chester A. Arthur, comes up, who's actually, a lot of people gave him crap because he was actually Roscoe Conkling's like second in command. History is fascinating, Kyle. But like, it's more often than not though. Like, I just think like once you like understand Kamala Harris, kind of like growing up in, because Robert Barnes, he makes this point that like she got her politics in Chicago, where they're a little bit cutthroat. Like he's kind of like a little bit like Obama-ish, where it's kind of just like, okay, I'm going to consolidate power at my specific base, and I'm going to take out every single opponent that could threaten my power. That's how I'm. That's how I would conceptualize it, and I think that's a big reason why all the stuff that's happening to Mr. Newsom out here in California is really fascinating too. I mean, first off, just the fact that we were able to get the signatures is pretty astonishing. As quickly as we did.
California couldn't write.
It's insane. And it's great too that they want like signature checks now. So this is kind of just like a weird, like, are we in the Matrix?
Whoa, wait, signature checks, those work? Weird. I thought of that before.
And it's fascinating because I think more often, even with everything that they're going to try and do to stop it, I think Newsom's probably going to lose, and then we're going to go into a recall election and see what happens there. Wouldn't that be weird?
Chamath Palihapitiya, please, for the love of God, vote for Chamath. Love him.
I think it'd be crazy if we actually had like a Republican governor. That'd be super strange.
Yeah. I don't know if Chamath is Republican or Democrat or independent or what, but he's do you know who he is?
No, I don't know who he is actually.
He's a big investor dude. I think he was actually one of the early big investors in Facebook. That's where he made billions. But,
interesting.
When the whole the Wall Street Bets thing was going down with the GameStop stock, he was very, very much on the side of the little guy, going after Robinhood hardcore and whoever was behind the shutdown of trading. He was furious. Like, a good man.
Wait, was he the guy that was on the news basically saying you should be in jail?
I think so. He's, I want to say Pakistani, maybe Indian. I can't tell. Because, he's a really young guy too. I'm not sure how old he is. Looks really young.
Is he like going to run hypothetically, or is it like okay?
I think he said he is, and I think there's another person that's running as well. I don't remember his name. It was a black guy.
I know who that is. I forget, the name slips me right now, but I think I know who you're talking about.
I like both of them, obviously more than Newsom. Yeah. I also don't know enough about them to fully endorse, But
Understood.
My money's on Chamath.
Man, this is crazy. Like, dude, we're only like a month in, and it's so weird, isn't it? Is it just me? Just like a month in, things have kind of just been like.
Yes, I was expecting the media to still be as unified pro-Biden as they were against Trump, which was probably foolish of me to think that, because I even said beforehand that if Biden won, the media was going to crash because they weren't going to be able to sell stories. But, they work the almighty dollar above anything else. So, loyalties get broken once they're not able to unify against Trump.
Man, I don't know. I think that's why I needed to take a break from everything, because it's just been a lot of information basically in the last 35 days that's been happening. It's really
the majority of the information was just wrong. That's where I got to the point where I just had to exit. It was like you could read 20 different articles that all contradicted each other, and somehow not a single one of them was remotely accurate. Like, all right, I'm done. I have to go sit outside.
You know what? Because I'm at the hospital right now, and I think most people there would probably have a liberal bias, but I just, it's a mindset. It's really interesting, because most people there probably are just really stuck to their mind. It was funny. I was just hanging out studying, and one of the techs, who's a really sweet guy, definitely doesn't like the orange man by any stretch of the imagination, but we were just talking about Texas and stuff, and probably the one person there that was, I would probably say the closest thing would be an independent. It was just funny because he was just basically Texas is run on oil and all that stuff, and it's purely gas, so that's why it's all frozen and stuff. And then she pointed out, or the tech, who I would probably say is a little bit independent, she was basically just no, I'm pretty sure they have a lot of wind turbines there. I mean, I believe that was the big problem, because they froze over against one of the worst storms, in this.
Can we also point out that everyone's saying that the gas was freezing, or they're stupid?
I don't know how. I mean, water is one thing because that will freeze. So I hope you filled your bathtub with some water so you can take a poop and stuff.
We were having to melt snow to be able to flush the toilet, and I had to go a week without a shower. It was horrible.
Baller move. Just soak in the sweat. Well, not the sweat. You're freezing.
It's horrible. Luckily, we weren't sweating. Otherwise, it would have been 10 times worse. But it still was not fun.
I'm glad you're alive. I'm glad you're alive. But you make a really good point too, because I mean, basically everything's just been, times 100 in the last month, and I think a lot of people. I thought it was really weird and fascinating because once COVID took off and basically just cancel culture and just everything just went full blast and bore, and no one spoke up about anything, and I think a lot of people were resigned to that as long as they don't keep burning down our cities and whatnot. But I think it's kind of fascinating that they're going even harder, and I think a lot of people are kind of just really confused. Didn't the Muppets have a warning, for
racial insensitivity in their old episodes, because I guess they portray racial stereotypes incorrectly. And I'm okay, first of all, how do you correctly portray racial stereotypes? Because you motherfuckers make racial stereotypes all the time. It's just okay when you do it, right?
Yep. I don't know. It's all hypocritical. So real quick, because I would like to talk about Crowder, but I want to talk about Disney, because Disney's basically buying up everything, and they're making everything terrible now.
Yep.
I think they bought something. I totally forgot what it was. I think they bought a lot of shows from FX, like the Sons of Anarchy and all that stuff, or the companies that specifically sponsor those shows or create those shows or have the rights for them. So I guess you could say, the Sons of Anarchy are a Disney gang now. Again, awesome. I'm not 100% confident about that. I just heard that when I was talking to one of the techs. So, fact check me. But
well, to be fair, the Sons of Anarchy enjoy murder a lot less than the Chinese government that Disney likes to bend the knee to. So it's no surprise.
Oh, burn! Yeah.
Transition.
But what I mean by Disney's ruining everything, it's just you have quality content and you have the ability to produce quality content, and then you have something like God, what's her name? Carla God, Gina
Carano.
My name, Gina Carano. God, I'm really tired today. I apologize. But basically, her getting fired, and like I don't listen to a lot of Ben Shapiro, but I listen to his like weird Sunday special thing that he has with Gina Carano. It's really fascinating, at least with just how she presents herself. Real quick, for those of you who really don't know, she had a tweet specifically. I interpreted it specifically as, "Hey, you know, Nazis put a bunch of people in camps and whatnot, and you know, it starts there. And if you keep hating your neighbors, you know, it's just going to lead down this particular path. So we should probably love thy neighbor and whatnot." Is that right?
I'll pull up what she said. That's not it. That's not it. So many news articles about it, but it's actually kind of hard to find at a glance.
Close your porn apps, bro, or close your porn websites, bro.
Oh please, those were closed minutes ago.
Just wanking it while talking to me. I know.
Whacking it. Makes me miss San Diego. The South Park reference for any of you slow people out there.
Dude, South Park's gonna have such a fun time doing. I'm just curious what they're gonna be doing. Did you find the tweet?
No. Fucking A. I bet you I would find it immediately if I looked on DuckDuckGo instead of Google.
Because what she said was basically just something that. Let me see. Sorry for those who are actually listening to this, and for all 10 people who actually listen to
the articles about her other recent tweets.
Man, they basically just scrubbed this tweet from the internet, didn't they?
Sure, it's not scrubbed. It's just buried through algorithms.
Really buried. Oh my goodness. Hang on. Maybe if I just like, I don't know. Damn it. Nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it.
See what I mean?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh wait, I think I found the picture that she used. It was basically that picture of Germany in 1944. I think with the kids in cages, I believe, right below it.
Let's see.
I think that was it, but I'm not sure. Okay, well, let's just keep going. Basically, it was something along the lines of that, for the most part. And Disney, I'm gonna probably say, in a weird power struggle with Kathleen Kennedy and all them, who basically ruined Star Wars for me personally. I don't know about you, but I'd probably say yeah, okay. For the most part, fired her, which, you know, I think is probably one of the single dumbest moves I think I've ever seen in my entire life.
All right, I found the actual tweet. So she said, "Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views?" That was her tweet. Got her fired.
That tweet got her fired. It's great, isn't it? It's great.
It's a really good, kind of obvious, in my opinion. You know, I'm sure most people don't think about things like that, but I think about that every day. So
me too.
Kind of like saying water's wet to me, and they're like, "How dare she compare this to what was happening?" Well, she's only making the comparison because it looks exactly the fucking same.
Mm-hmm.
And you have people who are literally allowing a Holocaust to go down in China right now that aren't saying shit about it. So we know that we're surrounded by people who are already willing to let innocent people go to the slaughterhouse by their own government, and they care more about somebody calling out the behavior than the behavior itself. How is that any different than Nazi Germany?
I just think it's even more. It's really kind of disgusting, and it's weird because I think a lot of people don't realize it because like LeBron James will get his sneakers made from factory workers just in China who are at this point a lot of them poor indentured servants and talk about racial justice here and all that, and I'm just like, well, come on, man, like
racial justice, but only for my racial.
Mm-hmm. It was funny too. I saw a story about Beyonce, talking about women equality and whatnot, and then a lot of her dresses or like it should like men and women should be paid equally, and then someone put a post right below it. It was like Chinese of like a picture of like Chinese female workers making her dresses, and her net worth is like $500 million or $500 billion or something crazy like that.
To be fair, when your dresses are made by slaves, the men and women are making the same amount of money. So equality.
But no, yeah, Gina Carano was basically fired from Disney. Now she gets to make her movie with the Daily Wire, which I have no idea what the hell it's going to be, but it better be good. I think it's going to be
the Terminator, where she just goes and fights everybody at Disney.
Have you seen some of her fighting, dude? She is brutal. Oh my goodness.
I believe it. I can tell by looking at it that she could kick my ass.
You know what, too? I kind of wish she was with... Let me ask you another weird question. Do you like Henry Cavill as Superman?
I mean, not particularly.
No?
I just don't care.
Because, like, this is way off topic, but I think he's, like, a weird Superman. I think he's just let down by terrible directors and terrible writing. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like with...
Terrible directors and terrible writing.
It's kind of like with like Phillip Rivers, where it's like he has the capacity to be a really good quarterback, but like when Mike McCoy's your head coach, and Keenan Allen's on the injury reserve, and then next thing you know, you're throwing to Vincent Brown and Eddie Royal, you're probably not going to do as well. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I thought they were a very beautiful couple together. Plus, he's so hot and ripped. Oh my goodness, those pecs. Oh my goodness.
All right, keep it in your pants.
Sorry. But anyways, the fallout from basically just the firing of Gina Carano, I think has been really fascinating. I mean, Jon Favreau is he's not even a conservative minded individual. I just think he's kind of like a non BS kind of person. Would that seem fair? Yeah.
Totally.
I think he's more like, because I think Vince Vaughn is kind of like the same way a little bit, where it's like, I just doesn't like, because I mean I'll see him or I'll hear him on occasion like on Jimmy Dore's show and stuff, and I think it's really interesting his views. By the way, his new movie Vince Vaughn, where he basically is like a girl, like the whole, I forget what that movie is called. It's actually really good. I think you would actually like it. I think it's really good. I mean, it's a lot of woke stuff, but I think he plays it perfectly. He's beautiful in that movie.
Yeah.
But what is your opinion on like the aggressive fallout that's come since the firing of Gina Carano?
Like the people speaking out against it and stuff?
Yeah, people speaking out, just what you think of it effectively, maybe what you think the fallout's going to be, and, just the ramifications of what's going to happen.
Well, let me pull something up really quick just to see for sure. Yeah, Disney stock is at an all-time high, and it has been going up fairly aggressively, and it didn't even notice the firing of Gina Carano. So the fallout is going to be absolutely nothing as far as Disney is concerned. They're not going to have to pay a price for being evil, because nobody these days does have to pay a price for being evil. For them, well, not yet, anyway. But yeah, so Disney doesn't give a fuck. You couldn't pay them to give a fuck because they're making too much money to care about your dollars. I think hopefully it'll open up a new avenue for new cultural influences, not necessarily from the right, but from the not left. Because honestly, whenever you watch like an actual like intentionally conservative movie, it's so awful. It's just so boring. It's not creative at all.
Well, because I think like half the time, there's a couple of those movies that I've seen, like they go kind of just like really deep a little bit into like, you know, the patriotism a little bit and all that. And I mean, it's great. I love that stuff, but at the same time, it's kind of just like
It's too preachy. Like that's not what movies are for.
Yeah. It's
just
a
like
movie.
how the far left has gotten way too preachy in their message.
Mhm.
That's not why we watch movies. It's not what makes us connect to story and character. It's like
Mhm.
you have these people who have a plan for trying to shift people's minds through media. And it's like, okay, you can't do that through entertainment. You have to brainwash people to do that. And I don't think that the conservative movement is going to go about trying to brainwash people, no matter what the left thinks.
No.
But if we can just have normal, good movies back, that will help.
Can I tell you something funny? Audrey and I, my girlfriend, we ended up binge watching all 3 the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. Dude, those movies are beautiful. I forgot how good they were. Oh my god! A little funny thing too is like I just remember watching it and I'm just like, there's a lot more American flags in this movie than I thought. Like every single kind of just like you know, just like money shot of like Spider-Man, he's like on an American flag, or like even the third one, he's basically like flying to fight the Sandman and Venom and all that, and he swings and he's running past a building with the biggest American flag ever, and I'm just like,
yeah, but a lot of that they were just riding the coattails of American patriotism post 9/11, especially because it took place in New York, so they were just kind of capitalizing on 3,000 dead people, which, you know, worse things, but there's also way better things to do. And let's be honest, if that movie were made today, the director, the writers, everything having the exact same intentions, which is just making money, those flags would just be gay pride flags instead of American flags. So I don't think that we should suck their dicks too hard on how great they are just for using American flags. But
very fair point. But no, I get your point. I think that's one institution that I think is going to be very difficult for, you know, I guess people on the right or conservatives to really even attempt to really kind of get any real market in, because unless they really start making movies, like actual entertainment films, it's going to be very difficult ultimately.
That's what I mean. I don't want conservative films. I don't want conservative TV shows.
We have the Hallmark Channel.
I want normalcy.
Mm-hmm.
And then people can drive their values how they will, instead of having values shoved down their throat.
Mm-hmm. It's
we
really
almost need like a counterculture of just being fucking normal and liking each other.
Mm-hmm.
Caring about the common man, not caring what their political opinions are, just being like, hey, I don't care if we disagree. I love you. Let's sit down and watch a movie, and let's both enjoy it. That's what we need.
Man, it sucks. Especially with Disney just taking everything that they possibly can at this point.
Money hungry vultures.
I'm just curious, like how big their like share of like the cinema market would be at this point, or just the market in general. I mean, they're in everything. I mean, once they bought Fox, that was just like an insanely big deal. They gave them basically hundreds of properties that they could hypothetically make a movie. I mean, they're probably not going to make another Alien movie or anything like that, but you know, they have it.
Now that you said it, I bet they will.
That'd be great. I mean, the Alien Queen's still a Disney princess. It's beautiful. But I don't know. It's very hard.
The same role as Kathleen Kennedy.
Oh God. I read an article that like George Lucas is back to. I think he's going to try and attempt to write like the next like trilogy of movies or redo them or something like that. I don't know if that's confirmed or anything. Is that true? Or have you heard anything about that?
I haven't heard anything about that, but how about he just does his own project free from the control of Disney? Like, just do your own story.
Dude, hopefully he does. That'd be great. He just like makes bank and then basically, you know, Disney ruined Star Wars and he's like, all right, I'll come back and I'll do, if you let me do what I want, I'll make it good again. And then he just makes it good again and pockets like $3 billion.
Although I'm not entirely sure Lucas is capable of subtlety. Like, Star Wars was so fucking meta, and it needed to happen when it happened, because if that movie came out today, it would be boring. So
very boring.
I don't know if he's capable of writing anything good.
I mean, I kind of want to rewatch the prequels too, because it's so weird. Just like looking back on it, like
that's one thing that Disney did well, is made the prequels look good.
That's incredible. Insane. You have to try to do that, and I enjoy the prequels, but I mean, God, the last Skywalker, that just That was beautiful. I'm being sarcastic by the way, but that was totally beautiful.
You know who we need to team up to do like a Star Wars-esque kind of film? Would be Jon Favreau and Dan Harmon.
I mean, Jon Favreau basically just did, and Dan Harmon's a beautifully insane person, and I just think their creative minds. Oh my goodness,
yeah,
that'd be insane.
That'd be I've been watching Community the last few days, and like the first episode, like 5 minutes in, I was watching it with my roommate. 5 minutes in, I was like, "This is so creepy." Like he has such a signature style of writing dialogue that the like little argument at the study table was totally the type of argument that you would see like in Rick and Morty at the dinner table.
It's beautiful, man.
Right after I said, "This is creepy," Pierce, Chevy Chase's character, he goes, "This is creepy." And I was like, "What the hell, Dan Harmon just read my mind." And then like 10 more times in the next several episodes, I would say something, and then whatever commentary I just made, they would like break the fourth wall and make that commentary in the show. Like, shut the fuck up, Dan Harmon.
I just finished Rick and Morty season 4 because I was rewatching all of them. God, that episode, what was it called? The Manchurian candidate one with I guess the stand-in Barack Obama. That was just I couldn't stop laughing.
Rick and Morty is fantastically written.
It's beautiful because like at one point like just Rick going and he dies and then goes it's like different universes because his consciousness or whatever goes into a different universe and it's just like seriously all these Nazis? What are we? Oh my god!
When did fascism become default or something like that?
Oh my goodness! When did fascism become?
Oh, the Nazi crap! Morty's been on some weird websites lately.
It's been on some weird stuff, weird sites lately. Sorry about that. I was texting. Okay, I'm back in. I lost my train of thought. China, Disney.
Morty dinner.
Morty dinner.
Yeah, we can talk about China and the concentration camps, but I don't think China wants us to talk about the concentration camps. So we should just, bend the knee and do what China wants and watch the basketball and watch the Star Wars and be happy.
Man, I still watch basketball sometimes. I can't help it. I think I'm just too embedded on. I was talking to Schmeat. I think one of the last 2 times we were talking about. I'm pretty sure the best player in basketball officially is it's either LeBron James or a white guy.
I mean, I don't know who the white guy is, but it's probably LeBron James.
I just want to take a brief I just want to talk about this for a second because he's probably my favorite player in the league right now. He's this guy. His name's Luka Doncic. He's from one of the like Slavic or Eastern European countries, basically. He was like this weird unknown product when he came in. He was like the 3rd overall pick for the Mavericks. He was drafted the year Dirk Nowitzki retired, and a lot of people were kind of like, "Who is this kid?" Because he won like a European championship at like 19 years old, and like in his second season, he ended up having literally the greatest first year or second year jump of any player in NBA history. And I would argue at the very least one of the top 3. You should just look at his highlights. He's so slow. He looks so slow, but he's like blowing past people and he's doing like Steve Nash passes and like my goodness, I can't fathom how good he is. Like whenever LeBron takes because he's getting old up there in age, Luka's just gonna like I remember talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo to you, that Greek freak, and I'm just like, yeah, Giannis has got nothing on Luka. Like it's gonna be a white guy, and it's gonna be weird to see this now. Anyways, sorry, that was just a brief off trackness. Let's talk about. We could talk about China if you want, brother, and the Uyghur Muslims because I kind of wanted to talk about that with you. And
we should do like a brief rundown of the history of the last like 70 years or so of China, which you would know a lot more than me, and then we can get into kind of what's currently happening.
Well, in order to understand China, you have to understand. I'll just go briefly. The last, I guess you could say, like 3,000 years, and that's effectively China back then was like one of the weirdest most just fascinating, culture-rich, I would argue resource-rich countries for the better part of like 3,000 years. I mean, it's just basically dynasty rule after dynasty rule, full of backstabbing, etc., etc. It's really interesting. There's a video called there's a YouTube channel called Oversimplified. They do what it literally says, just oversimplified periods and points of history, and it's funny and it's brilliant, and they do a great job. I think they kind of sum up what was known as the Three Kingdoms era, which was basically, you know, that video game Dynasty Warriors. Yeah, that's basically the Three Kingdoms era. Is just he did a video on that, and it's beautiful. But effectively, it's just China, for the most part, has been a country of many different provinces and warring states, and it ends up being unified by a leader or king or emperor, and then they go for like 300 years of peace before people start backstabbing each other, and then another people of the kingdom starts rising up, whether it's the Shi dynasty or whatever you want to call it. Things start tapering off, I would probably say, around a little known revolution called the American Revolution, where, you know, the world's starting to kind of see China. A lot of the European countries start seeing China, and a lot of the European countries and other countries start really gaining a lot of power. And because of that, China kind of goes, because they're more focused on consolidating their power and keeping people and all the Westerners out of China. But, you know, people come knocking, bam, and they start, you know, bringing Christianity, a whole bunch of different things, and, you know, China becomes a bit of a hot place for the most part in the, I guess you could say, 18th and early parts of the 19th century. And then a lot of the people, because capitalism, or at the very least the really controlled crony capitalism, I guess I would personally say, really kind of gets into China for the most part, like weird fixed markets, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole bunch of different things and sources you could look at. It's really fascinating. But ultimately, what was that?
It'd be more like mercantilism back then, right?
It was
like
very,
company, shit like that.
Yeah, incredibly mercantilism. And I think a lot of the emperors ultimately wanted to bring in a lot of the, I guess you could say, much more big market corporations, all that stuff, just to appease the European people. And also, you know, because you have to understand, a lot of these Asian countries, and Japan took this to the extreme, was we're going to take what America and all these European nations are going to give us, and we're going to make it better, ultimately. You know what I'm saying? China was no different. And China, especially once, you know, the 19th century rolls around, the 1800s effectively, things start kind of going out of whack a little bit. A lot of revolutions, rebellions, Yellow Turban, I think Yellow Turbans, never mind. That's the Three Kingdoms. There's a couple revolutions that are very notable for happening. There's one guy, I can't think of his name for the life of me, but he's really fascinating because he was someone that like thought he was like the descendant of Christ and basically led like a Christian revolution against like the emperors and stuff. Really badass. He's crazy, but really badass. And you know, it goes like that for basically like that entire century is crazy. And then once you get into
Rebellion, was the Boxer Rebellion part of that?
Boxer Rebellion was a part of that. Most of the rebellions effectively were just trying to kick the white people out. Americans, Europeans, and all of them, and they just kept coming because China's got everything. You know, silk, gunpowder, fireworks. What was that?
Can't stop progress.
Can't stop progress. Chinese prostitutes, you know how it goes. Sorry, because like that. Because like it sucks, but like, you know, certain parts of like Chinese history in America, it's like a lot of these ladies who are Chinese, you know, they made their living, if you know what I mean, which is really interesting. But things start kind of going a little bit crazy. A lot of people from China start leaving the country because it's kind of becoming a bit of a hellhole. Like, you know, it's basically become a weird state where it's just like super elite people and super dirt poor, where it's like, you know, places like Hong Kong, like once like the 20th century hits, places like Hong Kong are like weird places because they're kind of just like, you know, you have like 3 streets of beautiful clean places and et cetera, and the next street you have like 10 dead people on the ground because they haven't eaten in a month, you know. It basically kind of becomes like that. And let me make it very clear, I'm giving you like a very general history of it.
Right. There's kind of a lot of socioeconomic stratification. So like it was really rich people and really poor people at the same time in a very close place, right?
Yes, and I'm bringing it up because of the reality, what's going to happen to them. So effectively, the last dynasty, I guess you could say, the last emperor, who was this kid named Puyi, who's a monster, by the way. He's a really horrible person.
Interesting.
He actually a movie about him called The Last Emperor won Best Picture in 1988, which is a really fascinating, if really watered down version of who Puyi was. It's really boring, but it's really interesting too. Effectively, the emperors just keep dying, people keep dying, and there's no real strong government ultimately. So once the last emperor Puyi ends up being forced to abdicate because of eventually Japanese control, but people start taking over, warlords start taking over, and it kind of becomes like the whole dynasty thing again. The only difference is that you have a whole bunch of countries, the United States. This is around the time like Woodrow Wilson's in office, so he's trying to change the world because he's crazy Woodrow Wilson.
Shame to have the same last name.
I'm sorry, brother. Hopefully you're not related.
I've never checked, and I don't want to because I can
Please
see
don't.
it.
Please don't, because I would just look at you differently from now on.
Right? Painted blood.
Oh my goodness. Okay, anyways, I'm getting way off topic. I don't want to talk about Wilson's like a whole. I can't wait to do this episode on the understanding. That's gonna be like 7 hours. But effectively, what ends up happening is just social and political and economic collapse. And then a whole bunch of different countries start intervening and trying to take over. United States has a real big influence, but then Japan kind of comes in and they start kind of like low key taking over in like the 20s and 30s. And while all this is happening, you have two sides fighting each other. The Kuomintang, which today would be considered what is now Taiwan, or at least the political national party specifically, that effectively would move to Taiwan. And then you have the People's Republic of China, whatever you want to call them, or the Communist Party, who had a whole bunch of different leaders, but then they end up electing Mao Zedong because he was cool, I guess. It's really interesting when you look into that. It's because he wasn't just elected. There was like 3 other people that started it, and then Mao Zedong kind of just like swooped in. It's actually a little bit like Stalin. It's really interesting.
Tends
but
to be
effectively,
how it goes in tyrannical leadership.
Yeah, basically. But basically, the Kuomintang took over for like 10 years, and things were trying. Well, okay, it was pretty bad, but for the most part, they tried to bring some stability. Things were starting to get okay. People were like in school still doing the thing, and then the Communist Party started fighting each other against the Kuomintang to take over. Kuomintang beat the Communist Party back a little bit, and then Japan invades. The Manchurian incident, all that stuff. Japan comes over, does the single insane levels of atrocities that humanity to this day doesn't really know, and it's kind of shocking that we don't know about it. And then it's crazy. And then the Kuomintang and Communist Party kind of like unite just to fight off Japan. They win. Kuomintang loses a lot of forces. People's Republic of China, the Communist Party, kind of gets a lot of like the poor people on their side. And then after the World War II ends, they basically just like continue fighting each other. And then China wins in like 49, I think, or 48, 49. And the KMT end up having to go to Taiwan, where technically they reside today, or at the very least the descendants reside today. I guess technically I would be a part of that because my family's from Taiwan, so cool little tidbit. Basically, and then China, and then the Communist Party takes over. Oh wait, well they're still technically here today. They are still the CCP. So they're still here today. But
what year was this?
Huh?
What year was this? The CCP took over?
They took over, I believe, 48 or 49. They took over right before the Korean War. Which once all that stuff happened, because the whole Korean War is because in a lot of ways the CCP, well, and Russia obviously, right. But for the most part it was, you have basically like 800 at that time, like 800 million people who are communists. America, who the contours of American history is really interesting, and American diplomacy is really interesting, but they basically, instead of trying to go for like, we could either work with these people and then just beat them with capitalism, but no, we're going to go on the offensive and make sure, we're going to stand our ground, which is why the Korean War in a lot of ways happens. And China brings in like 1 million people that they end up losing because America, But
Plus
effectively,
throwing soldiers at us so that we would waste our bullets and gun barrels.
Yes,
because that's the commodity that they had was humans.
That was the one thing. Even Mao himself would say, we have all these people. He has a whole bunch of different quotes. He does not care about humanity in any way, shape, and form. Anyways, let me get to the good part now. So once the Korean War ends, everyone's basically like, let's see what's going to happen. So Mao Zedong has his great leap forward. He's basically going to just expedite industry is effectively and crop sharing, etc. He's trying to make China compete with America. The big issue ultimately, though, was just the unfortunate reality that they killed all the workers that knew how to make good metal. They killed all the farmers. The same thing that happened with the Soviet Union. And in their great leap forward, because of the, them basically stopping crows from getting at the crops, ultimately ended up having some of their worst harvests, ever. Well, that and a great drought. But regardless of that fact, ultimately they end up killing. I think in a 5-year span, numbers vary, Kyle. I've seen like the lowest numbers though I would probably have seen is about 30 million. I've seen numbers as high as 100 million people within 5 years. I know. Basically, everyone's like, Mao Zedong, you're a dumbass. Like, gonna kick you out. So he gets kicked out for a little bit, and then he does his whole what was it called? It's like his own like he basically creates a whole cultural revolution effectively in like the 60s to take back power, and he just starts consolidating power. He starts killing off a bunch of just high leaders within the command by radicalizing a whole bunch of college students, and all those people.
Yeah, that's weird how that happens.
Right? It's insane. Oh my god.
Is that the Great Society?
That was the Great Society's Lyndon Baines Johnson. Welfare state, yeah. But effectively, he ends up just consolidating power and ends up basically just being the dictator until he dies. And then you have like 5 other presidents, presidents, I'm using quotations for fingers, who end up just basically consolidating more and more power as more and more people die of starvation in the streets, and people are just kind of just like, this capitalism thing doesn't really work. Especially considering Hong Kong is like this prosperous city-state in a lot of ways, and ultimately is just kicking ass because of capitalism and British influence, etc. And then students start rising up, people start rising up, and then Tiananmen Square happens, and then they're kind of just like, okay, maybe we shouldn't do that. And then I would probably say around the 90s, going into that decade, a lot of things happen. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, all that stuff, begins effectively. Well, Nixon opens the door for China, in which I think it's fascinating because I don't know if there was any other president at that time that would have had the political power or the ability to do so, only because he was so hard on communism in the 50s and 60s. That's kind of like, he's clearly like not a fan of communism.
What he's doing.
Yeah, like he's not an idiot. And then American jobs start going over there. China starts doing much more capitalistic, I guess you could say, moves in terms of their economy, although it's not really like capitalist. They're basically just taking the ideas of, I guess you could say, pretty smart people there, and just like giving them all the money with restrictions, obviously, with total government control, I would probably say. And things just kept progressing and progressing and progressing. And every single time China's had an opportunity, they've just been trying to, take a little inch, if that makes any sense. Take a little more. I think that kind of sums it up. Am I missing anything?
Not that I can think of.
But yeah, and that's where we're at.
That leads us to now. But, we have the Uyghurs, the Falun Gong, and I've heard there were Christian groups too, but I don't know specifically. Are basically being wiped out by the Chinese government because the Chinese government is of the belief that state atheism is the way to keep everybody in line. And anybody who is religious is going to question state power, so they're just naturally going to get wiped out by the government because the government doesn't care about human lives; they only care about communism.
And that's the thing people need to understand too. Like, this isn't because this is just the ideology, but just the system ultimately really functions because it's really threatened it. Just going to threaten for the most part. Because if it was just Christians, they would in a lot of ways kind of be in the same boat, But yeah, and for those of you who don't know, that when did it start with the Uyghur Muslims? Was it 2010-ish, or was that?
I've known for a few years, and I think the Falun Gong were actually being persecuted for significantly longer. I want to say it was 90s, maybe early 2000s that they started killing Falun Gong. And one thing that I did hear also, and I haven't verified this, but if you're familiar with the body museum, where you see the circulatory system of a human.
Okay, yeah.
Was a murdered Falun Gong prisoner.
Oh.
They killed somebody and just put their body on display. And now that just travels around and everyone's like, oh, look at the human body. Okay, well, you're basically looking at Anne Frank without condemning the Nazis right now. So maybe we should stop going to the museum.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
The other thing that's going on specifically with the Uyghurs is they're actually having their organs harvested and basically being sold to rich Saudis who need halal organs. So it's like, hey, we have a market of fresh meat that you can put in your body and still go to heaven. So they just, exterminate people for the rich.
My goodness. Hold on 1 second. Because I was looking up something real quick. So, as of right now, looking up a website that's specifically to save the Uyghur Muslims, because as of right now, there are currently 3 million Uyghur Muslims, I believe as of right now, that are currently in concentration camps in China. There's about 5,000.
That's a number that, for some reason, we know about.
That's what we know.
China operates, it's probably
much higher.
A lot higher.
There's been about 5,000 East Turkestan mosques that have been destroyed since 1955. I think they rate, and I don't know how they got this number, but they said that the Muslim population since 1955 has decreased by about 58 to 55%. What we do know about is things that are their, I guess you could say, relatively speaking, what their rules are, what they go through day to day. They are not allowed to pray. They are not allowed to fast, not allowed to get married, no other celebrations. They are not allowed to speak their language, their foods, etc., etc. 1 million communist, quotation marks, guests live in Uyghur Muslim homes as government informants, which no one talks about. They're under mass surveillance, mobile spyware. They do DNA sampling, I'm going to guess, for their organ harvesting. Any one of them that aren't in camps are being tracked by their vehicle tracking, frequent pullovers. Yeah, this sounds a little bit kind of like another religious group. I think a Jewish religious group.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like that. It's almost like a government that wants to genocide an entire race of people. It just kind of has a playbook that they go off of, and the playbook gets used over and over and over again. But you're not allowed to point out the early stages of that playbook because you'll get fired. So start going.
Mm-hmm. Kyle, what do you think is what's going to happen? I mean, I can't conceptualize what's going to happen within the next 5 years, because at a certain point, people have to know about this. They need to know about this, and if we just keep this track, it's just going to be a complete destruction of, religious, whatever you want to call it. I really don't care personally. Doesn't matter what your religion is. What's happening is wrong. Everything that's happening is wrong. And I mean, I don't know. I just want your opinion of what do you think is eventually going to happen.
I don't know if I could say what's going to happen because as of late, all of my predictions have just been so horrible. I'm not even going to try anymore. But let's say, what could we do about it? And I don't think that war is the right answer, or at least not in the regular sense of war. Like, we're not looking at World War II kind of war. I think we're in the middle of an economic war and an idea war. I think the only way to handle it would be trade embargoes on China. Do not purchase from China. Do not provide military aid or financial aid to any country that does business with China. It might get to the point where we use our navy to literally create physical blockades to stop China from being able to trade. Means that we're going to have to depend a lot more on India for cheap labor. Because let's be honest, we're never going to give up cheap TVs. You know, we need those child slaves to produce for us because we're greedy. So, we're going to have India for that. But I feel horrible saying that because what that means is you're going to have literally over 1 billion people in China who are economically devastated by new trade policies. And you're probably going to have more people die from that than are currently being killed in these concentration camps. So I don't even know if that's the complete ethical way to go about it. You know, if the goal is to minimize human death and suffering, how the hell are we supposed to stop China? And maybe you could say that we can rip off the Band-Aid, make them go through a short period of suffering in hopes that the people will rise up against the government. And I don't know how they could. They don't exactly have the infrastructure to fight back against their government. They don't have the will. It's broken people, in my opinion, and I think trying to get them to fight their puppet masters by starving them is a pretty fucked up thing to do. But I don't see any other way to do it.
Hopefully, Hong Kong can be a pretty good example. They're still fighting out there. They're still doing their thing. It's still going on. It's crazy because, you know, this was basically a year ago and they're still just going at it. I think that's crazy. That's awesome.
What about a potential spread of information in China? You know how the government kind of has a chokehold on what the people are allowed to see?
Yeah.
What if there was a way to undermine the Chinese government by spreading information to the people instead of just spreading hunger?
I don't know about that because I read something. I forgot where it was, and this was a while ago. But I think it's a little bit kind of like with like I think like North Korea to an extent. I think most people, they're like, some are dumb, obviously, but most of them aren't naive to the realities of what's actually happening. I think
they're afraid to speak up. So what's the difference if the words
that's
aren't
true?
It doesn't really matter if it's because the people are stupid or if they're scared.
That's true. Okay, yeah. In that sense, I get what you're saying. Okay, yeah. I don't know. That would probably do something, but people would just have to really be brave and really stand up for, I guess you could say, like true, genuine freedom. But it's tough, and I don't know how. First off, I don't know how anyone would be able to do that. It would have to be like a whole bunch of, back then in like the 40s, you know, and all that stuff. Like a lot of the Chinese people who fought against Japan, it was a lot easier without, you know, mass surveillance. But they were able to create like their own like clubs and stuff, and really just fight back against the machine. But I don't know about, you know, today. That'd be very difficult, especially with how just the surveillance ultimately is in China. I don't know, to be quite honest with you.
Like the story of the Gulag Archipelago, the book that Solzhenitsyn wrote, documenting his time in the Soviet Gulag, had to spread that around illegally. They would take photocopies basically and, you know, pass them around.
It would have to be
if you had that book.
It would have to be something like that, and it would have to be like people in the media would have to really look at that. I just don't know if they would, because, you know, money talks to everybody, and that would be very difficult to do ultimately. But I think if like something like that comes out, then there's a real possibility for something genuine to actually change. I don't know what that would be, but something would change.
But how are the people even supposed to fight back? They're not armed.
Well, they might just, I don't know. They wouldn't have to fight back. I mean, most of China's economy is really just built on them building a whole bunch of stuff. And I mean, just maybe people just don't show up to work, Maybe people just stop caring. I mean, like most of China's
luxury. Like it's not America. They don't have the luxury to take the day off.
That's
They're
true.
going hungry when they are going to work.
Like the only thing that they could do is really just try and fight back and really come together as a country against the machine. But that'd be very difficult to do, and there's no real reason or real ability for them to fight back. I mean, if they follow Hong Kong as an example, they could probably do some damage. But at the very same end of the spectrum, the only way I could see any real change coming from that is just fighting in general, and not from them, but from some foreign body, whether it's the United States, India, maybe crikey, Australia might get in the action.
I mean, it's basically going to be impossible to win a land war against China. We can't invade them.
Yeah,
they can't invade us. That option is off the table for both. I think we could do a naval embargo. Like, I think our navy is powerful enough that we can basically tell their navy to piss off. Although I have seen a bunch of stuff claiming that their navy is more powerful than ours. And no, we'll just say that.
No, it's tough. I mean, they're still using like carriers from. God, I forgot what I think I was watching that China Uncovered YouTube channel, and I think they did a video on like the military power of China, and it's just been grossly overblown for the most part.
They have like one main battleship. It's called the Lianyang, and it's built on the frame of an old Soviet ship.
That's what it was.
Power, not nuclear. It carries half as many planes as one of our naval carriers does. Each plane can only carry half or a quarter of the weaponry that one of our planes can. It can't go nearly as fast, and it can't go nearly as far. They're completely fucked.
Which is funny. Because like a lot of people were laughing at like Taiwan's military defense and stuff like that, and I'm just like, well, I think they could probably put up a fight. They wouldn't win a land war, but I think they could probably put up something.
They would be able to put up enough of a fight to allow for time for Taiwan to get back up, because China doesn't have the ability to reach out and strike like the United States does. They have a lot of ships, but most of their ships just don't fucking matter, and we can blow them out of the fucking ocean with a fucking F-22. So, yeah. Although ships don't usually carry F-22s, but I digress.
Oh, China. All right. Can we put a pin on that? Because I do want to talk about Clarence Thomas real quick. My man, Clarence Thomas. He had a very, for those of you who don't know, I believe it was one of the Pennsylvania suits specifically for basically what occurred in the 2020 election. I think it was one of the suits that was still active, I think, for Trump, and was going to go up to the actual Supreme Court. And ultimately, everyone's making a big hoo-ha because it's, Kavanaugh and Barrett basically just said, nah, we're not going to take this suit. And the three justices who had some balls were Gorsuch, Thomas, and Alito. And I think Thomas, let me actually look it up real quick what he specifically said, because he was one of the few people to actually make a statement about specifically what God, sorry, my brain is not working right now.
You're trying to find Clarence Thomas's dissent on Google. Good fucking luck. You're about to fucking vomit if you try. This is fucking horrendous.
All right, hang on. Maybe I can use DuckDuckGo. Probably should have had all of this prepared before, but that was my bad.
We're professionals. I don't even know why they use Google. It's ridiculous what they'll bury through their algorithm.
It's insane. Okay.
Baseless Trump fraud claims. Why his dissent matters.
Okay, all three justices. Sorry, I'm looking up a Breitbart article. Let me see. Okay. Thomas wrote, or specifically, the Constitution gives to each state legislature authority to determine the manner of federal elections. Yet both before and after the 2020 election, non-legislative officials in various states took it upon themselves to set the rules instead. As a result, we received an unusually high number of petitions and emergency applications contesting these changes. The petitions here present a clear example. And then he basically goes on to explain effectively in a lot of ways what happened. The Pennsylvania legislature established an unambiguous deadline for receiving mail-in ballots at 8 p.m. on election day. Excuse me. Dissatisfied, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court extended that deadline by 3 days, which, for those of you who don't understand that, receiving votes 3 days after the election day itself is insane, especially with everything that has happened. A lot of those weren't, didn't have really addresses. They were basically just like, vote Biden, boom,
Heartbeat.
Yep. And then he goes on to say that for more than a century, this court has recognized that the Constitution operates as a limitation upon the state in respect of any attempt to circumscribe the legislative power to regulate federal elections. Because the federal Constitution, not the state constitutions, gives the state legislatures authority to regulate federal elections, petitioners presented a strong argument that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court's decision violated the Constitution by overriding the clearly expressed intent of the legislature. But elections enable self-governance only when they include processes that give citizens, including the losing candidates and their supporters, confidence in the fairness of the election. Confidence in the integrity of our electoral processes is essential to the functioning of our participatory democracy. I'm going to just say one more line or a couple more lines. He surmised this. That is everything that I just said before is not a prescription for confidence. Changing the rules in the middle of the game is bad enough. Such rule changes by officials who may lack authority to do so is even worse. When those changes alter election results, they can severely damage the electoral system on which our self-governance so heavily depends. If state officials have the authority they have claimed, we need to make it clear. If not, we need to put an end to this practice now before the consequences become catastrophic. My man. That was a lot.
If you read how that's being fucking covered, just run a Google search for Clarence Thomas dissent. Every article is that he is spreading Trump's lies, or he's sparking flames, or blah blah blah. You know the terms that these assholes use trying to lie to you.
I mean, the first things that pop up are CNN and MSNBC, and I'm just like, bro, come on, not about that. No. Real quick, I just want your thoughts on Clarence Thomas. It's an 11-page dissent, by the way, I believe, and I just summarized what were essentially one of the bigger points ultimately.
So you want my thoughts on Clarence Thomas in general, or his dissent?
Both. I want to know what you think about the badass black man.
I don't spend too much time thinking about him. If I had to make a list of my 9 favorite current Supreme Court justices, he would definitely be on it. No, he'd definitely be up there in my favorites. But I'm just not that familiar with his body of work, so I can't really speak too much about him. But seems like a extremely honorable and well thought out person. And that dissent itself, like, how can you even disagree with that dissent? Not definitely voter fraud. He's saying, hey, we have these laws. We have a reason for having these laws. These laws were broken, and that opens the door to this potential threat. Everyone, no, he's lying. You're brainwashed. Go fuck yourself.
Man, there's just a lot of people that, because I'm at the hospital, and they have such aggressive TDS that it's like, even if you're just like, if you didn't know, like, if that wasn't Trump, I think most people would probably just be like, huh, interesting. Because I mean, just logistically and objectively, everything that's happened, you're asking, first off, I to this day don't think they've technically proven that, Mr. Vice President actually won the election. I mean, every single election or lawsuit that's basically come out is basically just trying to challenge that, and every single one of them has failed because of standing or that specific God, what was it? It's basically like it's that weird, stuck in a hard rock in a place where it's like they should have sued before, but there was no damages, but now it's too late to sue. Do you know what I'm talking about? That it's one of those two things effectively ultimately ended up occurring, and most of those suits ended up getting dropped, and then the Supreme Court basically just drops the ball ultimately. And Clarence Thomas is just pointing out the obvious, regardless of political ideology.
People aren't willing to take the political risk to their career to stand up and go, hey, let's just really investigate. I don't think anything's going to come out of it, but let's just check. That way we can shut up the QAnons and we can vindicate the Biden win. Nobody will say that.
That's dangerous. What's funny? Because I actually kind of quieted someone when I was talking about what was happening with the election, and I basically said, okay, the one thing that would be an actual genuine I think that was the only check that we technically had in this election was the signature verification checks. Am I right?
I don't think we had signature verification. I'm not sure.
I think, at the very least, I know at the very least a couple of specifically the swing states, the one that were very heavily contested, needed some level of had some level of a signature verification check where that's like the last thing to verify, hey, this is who I am, et cetera, and I'm signing this ballot. I believe that was one of the last things. And every single one of those specific states that did not do a signature verification check, most of them except North Carolina, went to Biden. And the states that had aggressive signature verification checks went like hard red. Like Ohio went like stupid red. Florida went like stupid red. You know what I'm saying? Like Florida went like really red. I kind of want to move to Florida now. Anyways, that was the one thing that, they could hold their hat on ultimately, in terms of just like, that was the final check ultimately. They got rid of basically every single potential roadblock. Like, they're trying to get rid of IDs and stuff, but what I'm trying to say is ultimately, like, that was the last safeguard, And
a lot of the places, they did have like people that were supposed to be verifying signatures, but those are humans, and those humans can make mistakes, or they can be corrupted for whatever reason, and there was no check on their power, basically. And if we're to take that Time article seriously about the army of people that they recruited to check ballots and things like that, it's like, why the hell do you think they were recruiting people? What do you think they were recruiting them for? What do you think they were doing? They weren't recruiting people and going, do you promise to make sure that these are valid? Or they were going like, hey, you want to make sure that Joe Biden wins, right? Yeah, let's go. Oh, man. Don't fucking piss on me and tell me it's raining.
Oh, Time article. I don't even think we talked about that Time article. It's kind of ballsy, isn't it?
Yeah. Could do another episode where we just pull up that article and read it bit by bit and just go through it.
All right. That sounds beautiful. But anyways, Clarence Thomas making a very big statement, the media attempting to shut him down, and ultimately, a lot more confusion with a lot of different people, and a lot of different people just ultimately being silenced from objective reality in this election. Clarence Thomas is no different, unfortunately.
You're not even socially allowed to question the narrative on that one. Otherwise, you're going to get tied to the January 6th fucking insurrection. No way that could have potentially been a false flag by any means.
Dun, dun, dun. Well, we should talk about that next time. Anything else you want to talk about? Because it's getting pretty late.
I'm pretty good, man.
All right. For those of you who want to listen, if you like it, listen. If you don't, you guys can eat biscuits. I hope you guys have... That's my catchphrase. Sorry, I'm being a bit dumb right now. Hey, thank you guys for listening, though, and hope you all have a great day. So, signing off.
So.